What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Well, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Dave on NBC.
Jack Marius Tack-Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Mumbai Gutapi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison?
Swangles and Fort Lauderdale.
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Sears hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you are watching us on Iconic, Rockfin, or YouTube, or you're listening wherever podcasts are served, thank you so much. We appreciate your support. We couldn't do it without the amazing financial support of our sponsors. C60 Purple Power is a new sponsor for us. We've had Ken Schwartz on the show. It's an amazing company. It's a small business located not too far from me here in Denver, and I really like what they're doing. Their product is the ultimate antioxidant protection. If you haven't heard of carbon 60, it was recently discovered a molecule that fights inflammation. It supports immune function. It increases energy and mental clarity. You got to give it a try. They sent me a sample bottle. I've been on it for a couple of weeks now. It's amazing. I've been giving some to my cat. They also have products for your pets as well. Listen, if it works for me, it's working for her. And I feel like I'm shot out of a cannon every morning. It's great. So I highly recommend it. If you go to their website, c60purplepower.com, use the promo code MACRO, you'll save yourself 10% on your order. You'll get free shipping in the US and give it a shot. It's a little on the expensive side, to be honest, but it's expensive to make. And it's really worth it. So I've been taking it now for a little while. I highly recommend it. Look, there's a disclaimer that we have to talk about. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, cure, treat, or prevent a disease. Individual results may vary. Thank you very much. But take a look and support our sponsor, C60purplepower.com. Use the promo code MACRO. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm a Star Wars geek. I'm coming out of the closet. I'm coming out like, Tim Dillon on a bender, out of this closet, explaining that I love Star Wars. And over the last couple of months, I was introduced to somebody who is doing something that I think is revolutionary. It is the blending of podcasts and conspiracy with Star Wars. So I have brought on Kyle from Conspiracy and the Force to explain this all to us. So, hey, Kyle, what's going on? How are you, man?
Oh, not much. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I kind of had this idea several months ago as I was, about a year or so ago, kind of woke up to a lot of, truth stuff that's going on, especially even a little bit before COVID. And then I started looking back at Star Wars, something that I really love. And I'm like, holy shit, there's a lot. And we talked about this a little bit pre-show. Surface level Star Wars is great, but there's also an undercurrent of a lot of socioeconomic, political machinations, even into religious mythology type aspects. There's so much meat on the bones there that I started looking into this and like things that are going on in our world. Like, holy crap, there's these useful idiots in Star Wars. There's all kinds of stuff that's really a parallel to our world, which is probably pretty intentional because every, Hollywood director, they live in our world, whether what they're filming about is in a galaxy far, far away or in a far off, desert, whatever. It all has a basis in reality. And so, that's why I've been trying to kind of piece some of those together from, political aspects, economic aspects, social events, social change that's been going on over the last year. There's all an undercurrent of that in Star Wars in one shape or the other. And really, for me, it's kind of like, Star Wars is my Bible, right? Like you can go to church and they can talk about things going on in the world and how it relates to the Bible. I kind of do that, but with Star Wars. So essentially that's what it is.
Well, I was born in 1972. So I was 5 years old when Star Wars came out. So imagine being 5 years old in the late 70s with the movies were good, but not where they are now as far as visual effects, sitting in a movie theater and having the screen open and it starts with the orchestra and the Star Wars. I know that Star Wars was fined $100,000 for going against the Motion Picture Association's rules about playing credits before and after. They said, give us the fine. We're going to just put the credits at the end instead of the beginning. And I heard Lucas talking about this, saying, I have to get you immediately. And if you've got credits and this and executive producers, you're still in your world, and I need you in my world. And when that music starts, when you read the text as it's going away in a very unusual, and then the music starts and you get, Star Wars there, they've got you. I mean, they have got you. And so that suspension of belief, of disbelief, early on is paramount to this. And so if you watch Star Wars, like we all have for the most part, and you take it at a surface level, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, great special effects that still hold up. I mean, almost 50 years ago. I mean, it's crazy how advanced they were, and Lucas is telling a great story and all of that stuff. If you took it just at the surface level, you'd have one of the greatest movies ever made. But what I've noticed, and I know you did too, it took me a while. Maybe it was because I was sitting in a theater my freshman year at USC in Cinema 190 class in the George Lucas Theater. Taking one of those mandatory classes of theater. I then started to look at movies a little bit differently, not as detailed as you do, or some of the guys I've had on, like Ken Ami, who looks at movies like a savant. But I was still, even with my little ape brain, I was able to understand that there were different themes going on here. And one of the Star Wars, so we'll call it the original, even though it was episode 4 and then they do the prequels and everything. But starting with Star Wars, what you get is you get Greek and Roman mythology mixed into here. You get Luke Skywalker going on the hero's journey. None of this is accidental, is it?
Right. No. And if you're familiar with philosopher and author Joseph Campbell, he was someone that George Lucas studied a lot, and he wrote this book. I think it was back in the 50s or 60s. It's called The Hero of a Thousand Faces. And what this guy did is he went back through Greek, Roman mythology, Egyptian mythology, everything, and looked at all the stories and all the legends and all the myths that have been written over all these, thousands and thousands of years. And he's like, you can kind of boil it down to kind of almost 10 to 12 different bullet points of how these stories play out from somebody seeking adventure and getting to the end of the story. And Lucas was like, you know what? I'm going to kind of use this template and kind of make a pretty linear story from, somebody's basically starting out with nothing and kind of getting to a certain point, with a few things about this Joseph Campbell Hero of a Thousand Faces. There's a few things that he says happen in most of these stories. For one, there's something called a call to adventure, right? And just think about any movie. It's somebody that's off. Luke Skywalker is out in the desert living with his aunt and uncle, right? Like, working on moisture farming or whatever the heck it was.
Right.
any story, whether it's Spider-Man, Batman, anything, they come from something and they become something. So in the original Star Wars, Luke gets that call to adventure when those droids show up and kind of start leading him on this journey to meet Obi-Wan Kenobi, to go off world, this and that. So every story has something like that, where there's this call to adventure. The other thing is meeting like a wise old mentor. Pretty much every mythology, every kind of story has that, whether it's Yoda, whether it's, even talking about, Japanese martial arts stuff where they have to go train with some master out somewhere. There's always a wise old mentor that they meet that guides them along the way. And so there's just a few of these bullet points that Lucas kind of took and said, well, let me set this in a world far, far away, but use basically this template that Joseph Campbell set up.
Wow. Yeah, that's it. Why reinvent the wheel, right? You've got that there's some certain themes that work. I never realized it until you mentioned this, but it does seem like it has a bit of I mentioned Roman and Greek mythology, but also the Japanese samurai mythology as well. When you start to get into the Force and the Jedi and things like that, I had an interesting experience with. This is a while ago, I was taking a transcendental meditation class, and I said, it's a 4-day class. And so I was in it with my instructor, who's a cool guy. And we started to talk about this, and he was explaining how when you get yourself in this meditative state, and you can, he's talking about how you can feel sort of the universe flowing through you and things like that. And I said, this all sounds like the Force from Star Wars. And he turned to me and he goes, George Lucas is a transcendental meditationist. And I said, oh shit. And he goes, you might be closer than you think. So there are a lot of elements at play here. I mean, this is a deep, like, how far do you want to peel this onion? Because we start to see, we start to see ourselves. We start to see ourselves in modern day, our modern day world in this empire of long ago. So, talk to me about how this works in terms of, the parallels between our current environment, what we see today, and sort of how that mirrors this, the Star Wars stories.
Sure. And we'll start kind of with the original movie. And I don't know, let me ask Charlie what you think. The original Star Wars, I think one thing that set it apart from other quote unquote sci-fi movies is the universe did not look crystal clear. There wasn't bright colors. It was like a war-torn universe, because that's essentially what it was. It was a universe that was under a totalitarian government for about 20, 30 years. And where we start out, it's Lucas wanted to create what he called like a lived-in universe, right? As a comparison to something like 2001: A Space Odyssey, where everything is like pristine and clean and like all the futuristic stuff of prior years, where everything would be, everything would look completely different. But what Lucas is saying, it's like, okay, it's a futuristic world, but it's also been through some shit.
Like the Millennium Falcon is junky, a junky car. They're driving a jalopy around the universe. Keeps breaking. Can't keep the fucking hyperspace working. Everyone keeps monkeying with it. Sometimes you punch it and everything works. It's I liked that. I never really noticed that, but he did make it. He did make it say, oh, in the future, or and technically this is in the past, but to our brains, it always seems like it's the future. Oh, well, when we have the spaceships and everything will be working perfectly. And Lucas said, no, they'll be falling apart just like everything else that you own. So it was it made it kind of tangible to us because it was imperfect in a way that we can relate to.
Right. And so kind of from like a political aspect. So when the original trilogy starts out, which I think is probably a good place to start, and then we'll kind of shift back 20, 30 years in the timeline. When the original trilogy starts, this totalitarian government has been in power for quite some time. And you even see in that opening crawl that goes up the screen, it says, these rebels have just won their first victory against this empire. They were able to steal plans for this Death Star. They've been unsuccessful so far. So they're trying to make some kind of difference, but so far nothing has really worked. And, you kind of take it from that aspect. Okay, how did they get here? because you hear Obi-Wan Kenobi later on talk about, well, the Jedi Knights used to be the Guardians of the Galaxy. That's a movie, but the Guardians of Peace. And then the Dark Times came and the Emperor showed up. So like, how did you go from there to here? And really when Lucas, in the novel, I actually have this here if anybody's watching on video. This is the companion novel from 1976 that Lucas wrote in conjunction with the movie. And in the prologue, it gives some really interesting quotes about what happened to get to where we are in the timeline. I think that's another revolutionary thing. Like you said earlier, this is episode 4. He's like, I'm just going to drop you right in the middle of this story.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly. When we sat down for Star Wars the first time, said episode 4. Did we miss the first 3? What happened? And Lucas said, no. I have in my head, I have big plans for it's going to be a 9-part series, and
right.
But I'm going to start you in the middle, and then I'll work you. Oh man,
right.
The balls to do that, to try something like that. I love it.
Yeah, and a lot of people. I will say too, before I read some of these quotes from that original book, a lot of people don't really appreciate kind of the prequel trilogy. Did you watch the prequel movies, Charlie?
I did. Yeah, I've watched them all.
Okay. A lot of people didn't like them for one reason or another. I'll be honest. The character. The interaction between the characters, I don't think was very great. Mm-hmm. There was too much green screen as compared to what we're talking about the original trilogy.
Yeah.
It's all physical sets. They build these models and all that kind of stuff. Where you look at behind the scenes stuff in the prequel trilogy, it's just like a person in a green screen. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of that like physical world building to create the set as they did. So I understand some of those aspects, but there's really a lot of good story. I think the execution of it wasn't as good as the story he was trying to tell, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So these are the quotes like you said, he had this idea for these prequels, which came out in 1999, 2002, and 2005. He had the idea for these 20 plus years before. So this is what he said about what happened to the Republic. What it used to be Republic. He said once under the wise rule of the Senate in the protection of the Jedi Knights, the Republic thrived and grew. Okay, so sounds great. And then here's where we can get into what's going on in our world, what's really happening in America specifically. He says, quote, like the greatest of trees, able to withstand any external attack, the Republic rotted from within, though the danger was not visible from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
I read that and I got goosebumps. I got chills because that is so true. Like, and we've talked about this with communism and things like that coming into America. You have to infect the people with that, and then they destroy it from the inside out.
Yes. Yeah. You do that through education too. And this that where we are right now with the education system that we're seeing, it seems like it's a setup for gutting us from the inside. And that would, of course, be maybe we should take a listen to George Lucas and understand that he sees things. He sees how these things play out. Yeah.
Right. And So we'll go back to the prequel trilogy, which takes place, 20, 30 years before that. And before I kind of get into, the actual plot items, like, I want to read you some quotes from the prequels themselves and tell me if this doesn't sound like more like our world and our politics than Star Wars. This is crazy. Okay. So this quote here is from Palpatine, who at the time is just a noble senator. He's just, working his way through the galaxy, trying to help everybody out. Obviously, as anybody knows, he becomes the emperor of the universe, basically like Hitler to a certain time. So
let's just call him Mitch McConnell.
Let's just call him Mitch McConnell. I love it. He said, this was in the first movie, The Phantom Menace. He said, "The Republic is not what it once was. The Senate is full of greedy, squabbling delegates who are only looking out for themselves in their home systems." I mean, switch a few of the galactic words out of there. I mean, my God, yeah. you can tell that. And I'm actually reading a biography about Lucas now. I don't feel like he appreciates politics from one angle or the other. I think he just thinks it's all corrupt and all BS. Because, okay, here's another one. The courts take even longer to decide things than the Senate. Okay. Yeah. And then here's a great one from Obi-Wan Kenobi talking to Anakin, who obviously turns into Darth Vader, about his girlfriend. Obi-Wan says, "Don't forget, she's a politician. They're not to be trusted."
Right.
It's so good. When I remember watching these prequels when I was, in high school and stuff. You didn't, like you said, you don't catch these kind of things.
Yeah.
But watching it now, I'm like, holy shit. And here's the other one. The language in this specific one is great. This is Palpatine talking about the current ruler of the time, who he's trying to find a way to get rid of. He says, quote, "The Chancellor has little real power. He's mired in baseless accusations of corruption." You see that word all the time now, right? There's baseless accusations of fraud, baseless accusations of this and that. I just thought the wording in that was great. And then the final one, "There are many who believe that the Republic has become too large and too disjointed." Which, there you go.
Yeah.
100% correct. So you can kind of see throughout this that Lucas has an overall disdain for politics, because not really. It's people arguing about this and that. They don't care about what other people think. And then another really good one, which I just remembered as well, and we'll talk about in a little bit. There's a point in the prequels where they're talking about creating an army. Okay, so you can kind of see where it's going to go from there. But Queen Amidala, who ends up, birthing Luke and Leia, so she's Anakin's husband. She talks in the novel. She's thinking to herself. She's like, she can understand why people that she knows and people that she likes are voting to create this mass army. Why they're putting their own personal monetary value above the common good. Because she's such like a noble, but she doesn't really understand how politics works. And obviously, she's not the kind of person that should be in politics if she doesn't understand why that kind of thing is happening. So anyways, I'll kind of start just kind of breaking down.
Well, that reminds me of an interesting quote as well, and I'm not sure which one of the prequels it's in. But they're in that Senate chamber, and they're voting, and she says to. Maybe it was to Jar Jar Binks, somebody next to her. She says, "So that's how the Republic dies, to thunderous applause." Right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it was everybody voting and clapping and patting themselves on the back in the Senate for agreeing to ratify and create this new empire. And that was, and when I hear that, like I go back and rewatch those things. There's certain lines. I tell you what, the Star Wars movies, they have some great one-liners in them. It's in terms of like knowledge and information and sort of the way you look at things. And of course, Yoda gets a lot of the credit, but there are a couple of exchanges that stick out to me, that two of them in particular from Empire Strikes Back. Before you get into your thing, I just want to bring this up since we're on the topic of quotes that are memorable. And they both take place in Dagobah when he's training to become a Jedi with Yoda in Empire Strikes Back. He's in the jungle. He's doing all these things. He's parked his X-Wing in the jungle, and it starts to sink into the water, and it goes completely underwater. And Luke is still in the middle of his training, and he's freaking out about this. And Yoda's saying, "Well, help, lift it up." And he says, "I can't move that." And he says, "Lift it up." So he tries to lift it up with his Jedi powers. He's unable to do it. And he gives up, and he's frustrated, and he, puts his jacket on and goes and sits on a rock somewhere. And then Yoda very calmly, and and obviously he's a small little creature, just lifts his hand up, and you start to see the water move, and the X-Wing comes up, and he puts it down on solid ground. And Luke freaks out. He's just he can't believe what he's seeing. He's, how did you? I can't believe you did it. And Yoda's response is, "And that is why you fail."
Right.
So there's a great lesson in believing in yourself, in visualization, in understanding. To if you don't think it can happen, it can't. If you're going to prove yourself right. And then the second quote that really stuck with me in a same location, I think it was a different scene a couple of minutes later, was when Luke gets distracted during his training and feels this compulsion to go into the cave to face Vader. In this, what seems like it's not real. It's more of a dream sequence. It's kind of hard to figure out if it's real or not. You're not let into, you think it's real when you're watching it. It's only afterwards that there's a bit of confusion about it. But he says to Yoda, "What's in there?" And Yoda's response is, "Only what you take with you." And I thought, holy shit, that's so deep. That's so deep because what do you know, he's going into this cave. And of course, there's Plato's allegory of the cave that you can pull off of. But, but he's going into this mysterious place to face his fears. And he asks, "What's in there?" And the answer is, "What you take with you." And it's like, you could really geek out on that, and you could think about the ramifications of that. So I know that Star Wars is well known as a science fiction movie, great for kids. I was a kid, I loved it. I'm an adult, I still love it. But man, the threads that run through this whole series is so deep and so profound that it gets buried in the fact that it is a science fiction movie. And I don't think people are expecting to find the sort of depth that they can find in these movies.
Yeah, I mean, Empire Strikes Back. You know, I think a lot of Star Wars fans, or even non-Star Wars fans, think. I mean, that's one of the greatest movies because of these things you're talking about. It's more than just the action. It's more than just the adventure. It's the training aspect. It's the learning. It's that entire movie. You know, the rebels just get their ass kicked the whole time. You know, they make decisions. They make the wrong decisions, and then you know they have to learn from it. And I think that's a great allegory for life. Yeah. That, and sometimes it takes one time, two times, three times, whatever. And you'll learn a lesson one way or the other. And, going back to those two quotes you mentioned about when he was lifting the X-Wing out of the swamp, you know, right before he did it, Luke was like, "Oh, I can't do it. It's too big." And Yoda's like, he's like, "It's too big. It's not like lifting rocks." And then Yoda's like, no, it's no different. It's only different in your mind. Yeah. You know, it's like you think about people that doing karate or stuff like that. They're able to break a brick with their hand or a stick or whatever. If you think about it too much, you're going to drive yourself crazy. It's kind of like if you're overthinking something rather than just doing it. It's going to like with work or things in your personal life. If you have a issue with somebody, it's like, you know what, just deal with it now. Because when it festers and festers and festers, you're going to make it a bigger thing than it is. And, you know, that bigger thing becomes your X-Wing in that situation. And you can't lift it. So,
look, if you make a mistake in life, sometimes you have to sleep inside a dead tauntaun, you know?
Yeah, that's true. You can sleep inside a dead tauntaun. You find out, you know, an evil person is your father. You get your hand cut off. You almost fall to your death. Hey, you know, that'll teach you a little bit. So, yeah, the Yoda stuff is definitely the best because he, And you'll kind of see as we go through some of these movies, and I won't get into Yoda specifically, but you'll kind of see how some of that wisdom Yoda has later in his life. Well, I mean, he's 900 years old, so 20 years later, that he learned from this era because, you know, him and all of the Jedi, the undercurrent of this, him and all the Jedi basically get conscripted into military service for the Republic. Okay. They are essentially the galactic police for the Republic. So you can kind of see how that's already a little bit problematic. Yeah. You know, it's like they're a noble, I guess, quasi-religious society. They believe in, you know, and Yoda says it in The Empire Strikes Back. He says, you know, knowledge about knowledge and attack and defense and stuff like that. Like use the Force and use your Jedi powers for defense, not for attack. And when you go back to the prequel trilogy, it was completely the opposite. Yoda and all the Jedi were generals. They called him General Yoda, right? Mm-hmm. It sounds silly, but they had to fight these battles for the Republic. And I'll get into some of the details, but kind of the overall thing about what happened was they were so mired in the war and all these things going on that they didn't see what was happening from inside the Republic itself. Mm-hmm. They were too busy, and that was by the Emperor's design, by sending them out to fight all these battles. Their attention was directed in so many places. They weren't able to, you know, getting back to, you know, the Force and the religious aspect of it. They weren't able to center themselves in the Force and really meditate on what was happening and find out, you know, they find out 3/4 of the way through the final movie, they said, "Hey, I think there's a plot to destroy the Jedi." Like, really? You think? Where you guys been this whole time?
Yeah. Well, they get described differently from depending on who you are, because in The Mandalorian, they're described as a race of enemy sorcerers.
Right.
So it just depends on your perspective too. Is how you see the Jedi? It's a fascinating component to this whole thing. Like you said, it's sort of the police arm. They get distracted. They get sort of roped into a battle that takes them away from their core principles, which is that they're supposed to be the defenders of truth and good, and only fighting, only defending themselves. And they wind up on the attack, and of course they're going to lose that battle. They're playing the enemy's game on the enemy's battlefield. This is like Sun Tzu 101. Don't do that sort of stuff. And then they, like you said, 3/4 of the way through, they discover, hey, maybe we were set up. Maybe they lured us into a trap. Well, you would have known that if you'd stayed true to your core principles. You would have been home recognizing this, feeling it, seeing it for what it is. But you got off base of that. You started to become, you started to get into the wars, and that'll change.
Right. And halfway through, I believe it's the second movie, Attack of the Clones, Mace Windu, who I'm just going to call him Samuel L. Jackson, because in every movie he's just Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson says to Yoda, he's like, I feel like our ability to use the Force is being diminished because of all this other stuff that's going on. And he's like, I think we need to tell the Senate that our powers aren't as good as they once were. And Yoda's like, no, if we do that, then the people who are on the dark side are obviously going to know, and it's going to be easier for them to take us out. Like Yoda could already sense, but he didn't know what was happening. He was like, no, you can't just say, hey, we're weak. It's like, a police officer going to somebody's house, or like a social worker, right? Like they don't have a gun, they don't have anything. Hey, how's it going? That's not gonna end out well.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, back to Sun Tzu: act weak when you were strong, act strong when you were weak.
Exactly. So, okay. So this is, I'm going to kind of steal David Icke's trademark of the totalitarian tiptoe and call it.
Please, yes, you would appreciate it. This is going out on Iconic as well, so it'll be a nod instead of stealing it.
Yeah, so this is the galactic totalitarian tiptoe. It's very wordy, but I think you'll kind of understand what we're doing here. So in the first movie, The Phantom Menace, getting back to what you talked about earlier, when you first saw the Star Wars in the theater as a young kid, that crawl came up on the screen. It's like, holy crap, this is awesome. It kind of set the stage for where you were.
Yeah.
In the prequel trilogy, the very first movie, The Phantom Menace, one of the first things it says in that opening crawl, it says, there's been a trade dispute between the Galactic Republic and the commerce. Like people are like, what the hell? Like, this is Star Wars. This is bullshit. Like, come on, give us some action, give us some fighting. But that's very important and key to the story, because like we mentioned about the Jedi being moved in all these different directions through the war, this trade dispute ends up putting the Galactic Senate in distraction mode. They're distracted in all these procedures around, okay, there's this blockade of this planet, there's something going on. Meanwhile, Palpatine, who's a senator, is using that to his advantage to try to gain more power. So what happens, this planet Naboo, which Palpatine is a senator from, they this organization called the Trade Federation, let's just call them big business, whatever. It's your Google, Amazon, Walmart. The Republic has started taxing them more. So, we know in America how taxation worked from a government's perspective all those years ago, and still now. So they started taxing these people a lot, and that's not, and they don't like that because they're big business, for profit, all this kind of stuff. So they do a blockade of this planet to stop things from coming in and out as kind of a message to the Republic, say, hey, no, this is no good. You need to stop doing this. It ends up, it goes from a blockade of this planet to they invade this planet, right? They invade this planet almost as a message to the Republic, saying, listen, you need to stop doing this, or we're going to, take these people out. We're going to do this and that. Meanwhile, what's happening in the background, Palpatine is controlling that opposition side. He's controlling that big business through his dark side. He's able to influence their minds to get them to do this as kind of his, alter ego, right? He's like, there's the senator who's out in public, and then there's the guy with the cloak on over his face, right? It's very, very symbolic of like a Jekyll and Hyde type situation.
Right.
So he's orchestrating both sides. So anyways, the people of this planet say, Senator, hey, we need help. Can you help us? He's like, well, I'm really going to try to help you guys, but I don't feel like the chancellor, who's like the president of the Senate, he's like, I don't feel that the chancellor is going to do anything about it. I wonder if we shouldn't get somebody more strong in there to figure this out for us.
Right.
So he says, hey, Queen Amidala of Naboo. He's like, I can't put forth this motion. Would you be able to put forth this motion to like a vote of no confidence against this chancellor? And she's like, okay, sure, I'll do it. And then, sure enough, later on in the movie, guess what? Guess who's nominated? Palpatine gets nominated to be the chancellor. It's really interesting, right?
Yep.
And like I said, there's a lot of undercurrent happening. He's owning the opposition side, and he's also influencing the minds of a lot of the senators in the background too, whether it's mind control or there's something going on there through the dark side.
Blackmail.
So anyway,
it could be blackmail, a form of blackmail. We know this from knowing how our politics works now. When you see that darkness, you see something controlling people. I've described when politicians do things that you don't understand. It's like the way we detect black holes. We can't see them, but we watch their effects on objects near them. And when you see that object near, that you see an object doing something uncharacteristic, you have to assume, or you come to assume in the scientific community, that it's being acted on by some other object, in this case a black hole. So they determined, well, this is a black hole working on it. So when I see politicians doing things that seem out of the ordinary, like Ted Heath in the 70s voting in a way that gave away all the fishing rights of the UK, you go, why would you do that? And then you come to find out, oh yeah, he was a notorious pedophile being blackmailed by the Germans. That's why he did it. And you go, oh, that makes sense. So even in Star Wars, even in these political science fiction movies, you still have they import some of our current paradigm of politicians and the way politicians work and put it into the movie. So when you see moves being made in a Star Wars movie, I mean, my mind goes to, hey, maybe they were being forced into doing something against their will. Maybe all these people that voted to create this galactic empire, maybe some of them wanted to, maybe some of them had to.
Yes. Yeah. Like if this movie would have came out today, there'd be the galactic version of Epstein Island planet. Right. That
compromised place where you get all the
yeah. So
catch you on video with a Jawa doing something awful.
Like, oh, I just saw a hologram of Senator da 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 with the Jawa. Yeah. Oh shit! Oh god!
Jawas.
So basically, we'll cut that movie at the end. There's a lot of stuff happens, but whatever. Palpatine, he becomes the chancellor. Conveniently, it's a lot like I kind of align it to, if anybody's watched like the House of Cards series on Netflix with Kevin Spacey. Similar thing, right? He's a senator. He weasels his way up. So you're kind of seeing something similar with these movies too. So now we get into the second movie, and at this point in the movie, this Trade Federation that was the opposition in the first movie, they've gotten hundreds and thousands of other planets to join their side against the Republic, and they're seceding. Okay, so now you're looking at a possible civil war. So at this point, we talked about that the Jedi Knights are the galactic police at this point, right? But there's only so many of them. So someone says, hey, we need to create an army. And so they put forth in the Senate, and here, this just talk about our world right here. They put forth the Military Creation Act in the Senate. These are exact words from Star Wars, the Military Creation Act. Okay.
Yeah.
On the nose.
I've seen this before.
Right. And mind you, this movie, Attack of the Clones, came out in 2002. So if anybody wants a frame of reference, you can kind of align it right there. It's very, very convenient timing. Yeah. So they want to create this military. The former Queen of Naboo, she has become a senator now because she's like, hey, it'd be really fun it'd be really fun to get more into politics because it worked out so great in the past.
Right.
So let's keep this going, because she had like a noble idea of how she thought politics was going to work, and she was in opposition to this Military Creation Act, like most rational people would be, and people try to kill her. There's assassination attempts on her life, and etc. So they try to kill her, and she survives. they send the Jedi to figure out who's trying to kill her. And the Jedi conveniently come up upon a secret base where a clone army is being developed. Mm-hmm. A clone army, so that takes us down a whole nother wormhole right there, because this army was constructed in secret many years before the Emperor had influenced some people to do this. And, he's got all this stuff happening for years and years and years. So they stumble upon this clone army in development, and the Jedi are like, well, I've never heard of this before. They're like, there's no way this could have been created without us knowing, but then again, it goes to the point. They're mired in so much political drama. They don't see what's going on.
Right.
So anyways, they stumble upon this clone army. They're like, okay, that's interesting. We don't know what we're going to do with that yet. They also stumble upon an army of the opposition. They have a droid army, like a robotic army. Okay. So they stumble upon that army. They're like, well, you know what? We probably should use that clone army that we somehow discovered. And, but the Senate is going to get too bogged down in procedures and that kind of stuff, because it was it was like a 50-50 at that point. No different than our world. There's kind of 50-50 of what people want to do when it comes to any of this kind of stuff. So what do? They said, you know what? We need this person in power to be able to make more decisions on their own on behalf of the Republic, because we don't want to get mired in all this political nonsense. Why don't we have someone just make the decision for us? So guess what? They grant Palpatine emergency executive powers.
Wow. Where
Convenient.
have we heard that before? Emergency powers never go away, like the Patriot Act and things like that. I will return this. These powers to you when we are done. You have my word.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. And so that's kind of where the second movie ends. That Palpatine has all these executive powers. He says, okay, we're using this clone army. We're going to war. We're doing it. So then what happens over the next several years is what's called the Clone Wars. And there's a whole animated series about this. So for 3, 4, 5 years, it's just war in between that and the next movie. And you can kind of see, like we talked about before, all the Jedi are now conscripted into military service. Now they are essentially generals on the battlefield. Like you hear Yoda in the third movie saying funny lines like, around the command center, we must make a perimeter, right? Like that's not the Yoda that I know. That's not what he's supposed to be. And that's why in Empire Strikes Back, a great parallel is when Luke first shows up on Dagobah, he says, hey, he confronts Yoda. He says, hey, I'm looking for a great warrior. And Yoda, what does Yoda say? Wars not make one great.
Right. Exactly.
He'd been through it. And while they were probably successful, it didn't matter. In the end, their world was.
Yeah.
Oh, hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
So we get into the final movie, and in Obi-Wan Kenobi, who everybody knows from the original movies, he even says, Anakin, you should not trust Palpatine because he's managed to stay in office a lot longer than he should have.
Yes.
He's like, I'm going on one final mission to take out this opposition leader. And after that, if Palpatine doesn't give back his power, then we're going to take it from him. Right. Like,
it is Mitch McConnell. Holy shit. It's Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is Emperor Palpatine. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Oh God. I'm making the meme tonight to send it to you. So,
I mean, she does kind of look like Emperor Palpatine. Let's be honest here. I'm not trying to be a dick, but you know, let's just, I mean,
if you blend Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton together and put that hood over them, forget about it. Yeah, it's all over
for sure.
You can see the lightning coming out of her fingertips when you look at her.
Yeah, easily.
So, and all I've talked about so far is the political aspect. In a second, I'm going to talk about kind of the social, emotional aspect, because like I said, he needed somebody to help him along this way. So we'll talk about the Anakin aspect here in a little bit, but broad strokes, what happens, Palpatine ends up telling Anakin, hey, listen, I can help you out in your growth in a Jedi. He's like, I know both sides of the Force. I know the light side. I know the dark side. And Anakin's like, well, no, that's bad. I'm gonna go tell on you. So he goes and tells Samuel L. Jackson, which that's his official name in the movie, Samuel L. Jackson.
Right.
He tells Samuel L. Jackson, he says, hey, I think we found out who the dark side leader is. It's surprise, like spoiler alert, it's the guy who's been in charge of and leading everything this entire time. That's crazy.
And his wallet says "bad motherfucker" on it too. Ironically.
It does. I don't know how that made the PG-13 rating, but so Samuel Jackson's like, holy shit. Okay, we're gonna go confront him. He's like, we're gonna arrest him, and we're going to, the Jedi will have to kind of, we're gonna arrest. That's what he says. We're gonna go arrest him. Okay, I don't know if anybody who's seen a Star Wars movie, has any Jedi ever been arrested? I don't think that's gonna work out very well.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you gonna hold him in? There's no way you can bind that kind of person. So like, we're gonna go arrest him, and then we're gonna do a peaceful transition to whatever a new leader. Okay, so they go into his office and they're like, hey, listen, we know what you're doing. And then he's like, no, I'm not. He's like, I'm not gonna let you. He's like, and then one of my favorite lines, Samuel Jackson says, like, we're gonna take you down. We're gonna talk to the Senate about this. And Palpatine says, I am the Senate. He's like, I am. Like, no, like, you don't realize, like, I don't know how you don't realize it at this point. He's like, I am. I've been influencing everybody this whole time, blackmailing, dark magic, all this stuff. It's me. All these people are just puppets at this point. He's like, I'm doing it. So Palpatine attacks him, kills them all. And then in the process, his face gets scarred and disfigured to where you see him in the original trilogy. His face is all garbled and nasty looking. Before, he was just like a normal looking person, but his face got all garbled and nasty because of all this skirmish he was in, which the question I always have is that how he really looked the whole time and he was masking it? Or was it truly because of what happened?
Right.
If anybody's seen Game of Thrones, there's a character in there. She's called the Red Woman. She has this amulet around her neck, and she looks like a beautiful young woman. When she takes it off, she's like a 900-year-old ugly looking person who just is using magic to maintain a younger appearance. So anyways, he's quote unquote scarred and disfigured by this attack. Okay. So we're going to call what just happened there like the Capitol riot. Okay.
Okay.
Because what he does, he goes into the Senate and says, listen, I've been attacked by the Jedi. The Jedi want to take over. They're trying to overthrow me. We have to turn them all. We have to take them all out. We have to do this. Look what they've done to me. And he's like, for everybody's protection, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a galactic empire to bring peace, and that's where the line came in. You mentioned earlier, this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause.
Mm-hmm.
And he had even said a little bit before to Anakin, he said, and for people that don't know, the Sith is what like the dark side version of the Jedi is. Mm-hmm. He told Anakin like a few moments before, he said, pretty soon the Sith will rule the universe and then we will have peace.
Right.
So
pretty soon we'll have a one world government with a one world army, and then we'll have peace.
Right. Or unity. I mean, we have unity now, Charlie. I don't know if you knew that with the new administration, we have unity now. So
yeah. I am unified with all 172 genders.
Exactly. I just saw something about Mr. Potato Head earlier that I can't even, it hurts my brain to even, think that's a problem right now. But anyway, so they say, okay, we have to now hunt down and take out all the Jedi that were responsible for this. Not just the ones that were there, but every single one. That's interesting.
Put them on lists. Let's make them list, right? Isn't that what AOC wants to do?
Right. Yeah. Even if you weren't at the Trump rally on the 5th or the 6th, even if you weren't there, we know what you support. We know what you're about. We're going to come find you. So that's when what happens next, and kind of going back to that clone army, he had implanted something in the clones, almost kind of like a switch. So he said, hey, Order 60, he called it Order 66. Mm-hmm. He said, execute this order. And then they all turned on the Jedi that were with them and wiped, 99% of them out. Okay. And then there you go. He's effectively ruling the universe. He has one less loose end to tie up though. All these people in this trade federation, this big business that have been helping him out this whole time in doing this secession from the government, that he had been manipulating that side as well. Well, he went and rounded all them up and took them all out too.
Yeah.
So
wow, where did we see that? We saw that in World War II with the brown shirts. They helped Hitler rise to power as he grew a parallel army alongside the SS. When the brown shirts had kicked in all the doors and busted all the windows and done all the things that he needed them to do, he then turned the SS on the brown shirts and wiped them out when they were no longer needed. History repeating itself. God knows George Lucas or whoever wrote this one knew that going in.
100%. And I forget his actual name, but the Russian defector who had that great interview in the 80s about
Yuri Bezmenov.
Yes, about the Soviet Union. That's what he said. He said, all these useful idiots, all the teachers, politicians, people. He's like, they all brought this thing to fruition and got it into the public consciousness. Mm-hmm. Then they lined them all against the wall and shot.
Right.
So like you said, history repeating itself, and a lot of people don't realize that that's going to happen to them. Especially, even if we talk about censorship, it's cool right now for the right to be censored, but who's to say in 20, 30 years it's not going to be flipped, and these people are going to be like, well, what the heck? I thought it worked this way. But so that's all the political stuff. I mean, obviously, I don't have to get too deep into it, but the other aspect of it is he really needed another use besides all these big leaders of business. He needed somebody else strong to help him out to finish the job for all these Jedi, and that was Anakin Skywalker. As we know, he all becomes Darth Vader. As this, and I joked with you about this a few days ago. The original story was that he was pushed into a volcano by Obi-Wan.
yeah, exactly. Where have I gotten myself in trouble talking about pushing?
Right. Yeah. Anybody who knows who's watched your show or listened to your show knows all about that.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that Bill Gates is Darth Vader. I get it.
Bill Gates is Darth Vader. Yeah, exactly. So, the Emperor manipulated Anakin from even when he was a small boy. I mean, there's a thought. I mean, there's even like conspiracies within Star Wars. People think that he possibly caused him to be born, like because he was born of a virgin birth. Conveniently enough, like we see that all the time in mythology too.
Yeah.
With biblical, Egyptian, all these other things. There's always this virgin birth. So, he was born. Virgin birth. He was a slave. He was freed by the Jedi. He had to go leave his mother to go become a Jedi. So you can kind of see it already right there, right? Like it's somebody without a home, somebody without parents, that it could be manipulated one way or the other at a very early age.
That's what these pedophiles do. They find people that come from broken homes and screwed up families, and they groom them into allowing this sort of abuse or manipulation to take place.
Right. And, even the Jedi, even Yoda kind of saw something early on that he knew there was something not right, but a lot of people thought he was going to be what's called the chosen one, that was going to, fix everything for them. And kind of a quick side note, Yoda had a great quote when he first met Anakin as a boy. He says, "I sense a lot of fear in you."
A lot of fear.
And yes, and this is probably my favorite quote from the prequels. Yoda says, "Fear is a path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering."
Yeah.
And you put that in the context of our world, there's a million parallels. Even with the story of Anakin, you see, if you're afraid of something that ends up turning to anger, think about things like, just a quick rabbit trail, all the stuff about the police, right? Certain communities are afraid of the police for good reason. Mm-hmm. That fear turns to anger. That anger turns to hate. They should all be defunded, etc. And then there's the suffering. Then there's the riots. Then there's all kinds of. So you can what Yoda said about this. I call it the dark side spiral. Fear, anger, hate, suffering. You can put a million different things in that bucket and kind of see how it turns out. So anyways, he starts going along his journey, and Palpatine has kind of started to befriend him a little bit, because he can see that he's growing strong in the Force, and the Jedi have been kind of holding him back a little bit, because they sensed a little bit of something there. But Palpatine was always nice to him. He was always kind to him. He was like the father he never had. In fact, maybe he was his father for all we know. So what ends up happening is Palpatine says, "You know what? You've been such a good Jedi. I think that you should be on the Jedi Council," which is essentially like the upper echelon of the Jedi Knights, right? Like they all sit in a room, they have meetings and discussions, but it's like Yoda and Obi-Wan and all the major Jedi of the time. So Anakin's like 20 years old, and Palpatine's like, you know what? I think you should be on the Jedi Council. And you know what? I'm going to actually, since I'm the leader of all this, I'm going to appoint you as my personal representative. So you can tell me what's going on with the Jedi, but it also helps him out too. So he's like, oh, great. That's such a great honor. Like nobody that young has ever been on the council before. So he goes on the council. The council says, okay, you can be on this council, but we're not going to call you a Jedi Master. You're just whatever at this point. You haven't reached our level. You know, we have to have you on here because our boss said so, but we're not going to call you a Jedi Master. And Anakin's like, well, what the hell? That's bullshit. Da, 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 da. So once again, you can see the rift starting to grow between him and the Jedi and how Palpatine has been helping him out this whole time. Another thing that's been happening is Anakin's been having these dreams. You know, he had terrible dreams about his mother dying. He went to try to save her, but he couldn't. He then has dreams about his wife dying. And he's like, you know what? I need to find a way to save her. And I think the subtext of all that is Palpatine has been implanting these dreams in him as a way to manipulate him through emotion. You know, and that's what a certain side is all about, is about emotion. You know, you get people to make emotional decisions. There can be catastrophic consequences. So Palpatine ends up telling him, you know what? I can help you save the one you love from dying. And Anakin's like, what? Like, how do you know that? He's like, just listen. I know all this stuff. I can help you out. You know, I know the dark side. And that's when we talked about earlier. Anakin's like, crap. Okay, I appreciate that, but I have to turn you in. But he ends up coming back, saving Palpatine right before he dies, because he's like, I need this guy. He's like, I need him because I need to save the person I love. And he ends up killing Samuel L. Jackson, throwing him out a window. And then he ends up proceeding to, and this is where it gets really dark, even for a Star Wars movie. Yeah. You know where I'm going with this is Palpatine tells him, go to the Jedi Temple and just kill all the Jedi, everybody. And he goes there and he kills everybody, even like the kids. Like that's when it gets really, really dark. I mean, even for Star Wars, I mean, Darth Vader's a great character, but when you think about it, he's like a child murderer. Yeah. You know, it's kind of disturbing to like, you know, equate those things together. So he does all these terrible things, and then he goes off and he kills all these leaders of the big business that Palpatine wanted to get rid of as well. So he killed all these people, and he did this all because he wanted to save the one he loved. He did this all because he thought he was doing something good. A great parallel with that, if anybody has seen like the Breaking Bad series, you know, at the very start, Walter White, you know, he's got cancer. He wants to try to help his family. He knows he's going to die. So he becomes like a crazy meth dealer and all this stuff. And then at the end, it obviously all goes terribly wrong and he doesn't get anything. Similar story here. Obi-Wan ends up fighting him on this lava planet, leaves him for dead. Like, you know, Anakin, you were supposed to be the one that helped us out. You were supposed to be the one that saved everything, but now you just this evil piece of shit. So that's where that's the interesting thing about the prequels. That's where it like ends. You know, most trilogies, like the villain is defeated in the end, but in this case, it's the complete opposite. You know, the hero has turned villain, and then from Palpatine, a kind of a heroish character has turned into the villain the other way too. So that's kind of where it leaves you. But you can kind of see right throughout all those different steps of how Palpatine and this dark force manipulated the Jedi because they were so distracted in all the minutia, and even the Senate, they were wrapped up in all the minutia of laws and all this stuff that they don't really see what's happening right in front of them. And it's no different in our world.
Yeah, I remember when that scene where all the Jedi were voting on whether or not to impeach Donald Trump. That was a crazy scene.
Oh yeah, it was crazy.
They had them working on all that nonsense.
People getting force choked. There were lightsabers. Oh, it was pretty nuts.
You know, it's funny because there's been a lot of thought that has gone into these movies. I mean, a whole lot of thought, to the point I remember reading something years ago, and this was fascinating to me. And it was interesting that George Lucas admitted that he was wrong and made a quick change of this. But when they were releasing Return of the Jedi, they were days from releasing Return of the Jedi. It had a different name. You remember what the name of it was?
Revenge of the Jedi.
Revenge of the Jedi. Until they were doing test panels and whatever, and some kid said the Jedi would never seek revenge, and he went, "Oh shit, you're right. That's the wrong name for this. We have to call it Return of the Jedi." So, the even that level of attention to detail, at least when Lucas was running things, I found to be impressive, and I think it may, and some may say, "Oh, that's a control freak," but whatever. That's what you have to, I mean, maybe that's what you have to be in order to get through this. Let me take you on a different turn, and we'll wrap it up with this. We're not finished, you and me. We're going to have to do another episode where we get into the final 3 episodes, because there's even more going on there too. So, but to keep this a little bit more topical in terms of current events, we recently had the Mandalorian a Gina Carano situation, where we're starting to she speaks up and makes some comparisons, and the woke mob does what they do, which is go crazy over nothing, and freaks out and gets her fired. Is Disney at risk of getting woke and going broke when it comes to all these series?
I would say yes, for me personally, but I don't think they care. I think to a certain extent, if you think about, like Twitter and Facebook and all these, a lot of people are fighting back and saying, well, what they're doing, their terms of service are garbage, doing this and that, stock prices are going down, this and that. There's a back channel funding coming to all these organizations from those upper echelon people, right? So I think it is going to hurt them. And that gets into the whole problem is they would have had a problem one way or the other. It's just what side do they have a problem with? But the side they had a problem with isn't the side that's funding them. So they had to make that decision. And I know you had mentioned on a recent one about, comments that Pedro Pascal had made about, comparing Trump and Nazi Germany and all this stuff. And that's okay. But when it's the other way around, there's another set of rules. I will say that a lot of people that, like myself, that have watched all the new Star Wars Disney movies, I don't want to say that we don't want to consider them as part of the overall story, but we don't want to consider them as part of the overall story.
Yeah.
Because it even when you take out some of like the social, economic, like woke stuff that they've been adding in these movies, it's not a cohesive story. They had multiple directors, they fired multiple directors. They had one movie go this way, and then one movie go this way, and one movie go this way. I think they're more at risk of, from a creative standpoint, of hurting the fans and the franchise. I think from the woke perspective, I think what you're going to see now is you're not going to see anybody remotely close to being a conservative or that in a Star Wars picture, in a Star Wars TV show. I think they've learned their lesson from trying to get someone with a differing opinion. I think there's a lot of great actors and actresses that have some of those values that aren't going to get the chance because Disney is drawing this hard line in the sand for whatever reason.
Well, I mean, look, George Lucas was very inclusive. He had 6 boobed ladies dancing at Mos Eisley. I mean, he had Greedo. He was not afraid. He represented people of color, even people that were green. I mean, he had them all in there. I mean, George Lucas was very inclusive.
The one thing that Disney Star Wars, what they've really tried to do is, almost every one of the new Star Wars movies, it's a female lead, which isn't bad in itself. But they said the reason for doing that, they said, well, we need more strong female leads in movies. And then I thought, okay, can we talk? You guys ever heard of somebody called Princess Leia? Someone who was a badass and got them out of every situation when they were in trouble. Someone that was technically a damsel in distress, but found her own way to get out of the problems on her own and didn't back down and gave people shit. and spit in the face of the Imperial officers every time she had a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's talk about someone like that. Like, they act like there's never been a female character until they came around and took all these franchises over. I mean, even, back in the 70s, like from the Alien franchise, right? Like Ripley, there's another one. I mean, this is going back 30 plus years. They're trying to say that there haven't been any strong female characters, but it's not what they've created. So it didn't count, apparently. And then with the Gina Carano thing, hey, here's another really great, really strong female character, but we have to cancel her because she has different beliefs. So like, which one is it? Pick a lane.
It's annoying. It's tough for us to have to figure this out. Look, these movies are so elaborate. They're so multifaceted, and there's deep layers to it. There's mythology encoded into it. There's all of the symbolism. There's great stories. And I'll tell you what, man, your podcast is so fascinating. So tell everyone where they can find you, and they can where they can geek out like I do.
Sure. And first I will say too, I know you've had Isaac Weishaupt on the show before. Mm-hmm. I want to let everybody know, if they weren't aware, he wrote a really good Star Wars book a few years ago called The Star Wars Conspiracy, talking about Illuminati symbolism and stuff in Star Wars. And it was a great read. I read that a few months ago. It's really fascinating. I mean, that what we've talked about from the political angle, like this goes into a whole nother level about how, the Force is kind of like a one world religion on itself because everything's connected. So I would definitely encourage everybody to go out and buy that. It's called The Star Wars Conspiracy by Isaac Weishaupt. But my podcast is called Conspiracy in the Force. You can find it pretty much anywhere you have podcasts. I have a YouTube page. It's Konspiracy Kyle, but conspiracy with a K, so I don't get banned, which has worked pretty good so far.
That's smart. Should have done that. Well, I appreciate you, and I love this topic, and I think it's phenomenal. And people, hey, look, this is a good way for you to get your conspiracy fix without it being so serious. It allows you to sort of blend it in with some of these pop, cultural movies that we've grown up in. So I am a huge fan. Everybody, please go check out Kyle and his work, support his podcast, give it a good rating, and share it with people. Share this podcast too with people if you can, because God knows the algorithms won't support us. And check out our sponsor, C60purplepower.com. Use the promo code MACRO. We appreciate it. Kyle, you're the best. Thank you so much. We'll have you back on soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, Charlie.